Now, Lyle's genetic markers showed more genetic diversity than the average person from the Four Corners area. It was likely that he had one parent from New Mexico and one parent from South America. And that information was really going to help them as they built out the family tree and looked through marriage records and reached out to family members from this tree. And it was with this information that a volunteer called a distant relative of Lyle's in New Mexico. She had done this kind of thing before where you pick a person on a family tree and you call them to see if they know anything about the person you're calling about. It's really difficult to do because you don't know how close that person actually is to your victim. So she knew that this was most likely a hopeless call. The woman she was calling would probably be totally confused, maybe even think that it was some kind of prank. But the woman picked up, and the volunteer began her spiel explaining how she was from a project looking to identify a John Doe. He was a young man who had taken his own life almost 2 decades ago. He might be related to the woman, but he also might have one parent from South America. And to the volunteer's shock, the woman on the other end of the phone wasn't confused at all by this. In fact, she knew exactly who the volunteer was talking about. She knew who Lyle's parents were. The woman wasn't a close relative of Lyle's at all, but she remembered how distant cousins of hers had a son go missing years ago, and they matched the genetic description that was given by the volunteer. One parent from New Mexico or that area, and one parent from South America. With the parents' contact information in hand, the volunteers passed the information on to police. And finally, after years and years of searching, humans and the rest of his department could call Lyle's parents and arrange to bring him home. In May of 2018, they made contact. The parents did confirm that their son had gone missing, and this was probably the first call that the couple had gotten in the 17 years since. I can't even begin to imagine the not knowing. They agreed to look at photos and try to identify the body. Once they saw them, they knew. This was their son. And after 17 years, they finally had an answer. But his name was not Lyle Stevick. It was Christian. Now, the family has requested to remain anonymous, so I don't want to share last names or too many other identifying characteristics about them, but I do think it's important to acknowledge that this man had a name. Christian's family told Detective Humans that they hadn't looked for their son because they thought that he had chosen to cut off contact with them. And of course, not all of the rabid fan bases online were willing to accept that they would not know more about who their John Doe really was or what might have led him to take his own life.